to come and see you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, please do
Um,
let us know if you do come up. I'm
Definitely.
like there from Wednesday to Friday. Be really
Awesome.
lovely to see you. And yeah, we got lots happening the next few months. We've got the Octopus show, and then we've got a really lovely grief project that's gonna launch at the end of March. It's something that we've been working on for a year now. So we're really looking forward to launching that. Yeah,
Brilliant.
just lots of really nice stuff happening. So yeah, let us know if you are coming.
Definitely.
Um,
Oh, Jen, just to say, so I changed the color coding slightly,
All
just
right.
because I think it makes sense to kind of switch over to you basically where it turns red, so I can talk through the Catherine May
Awesome.
quote very briefly, and then it's kind of you for the rest of the rest of
Cool.
the talking
A good
points.
half. That's fine. Yeah. Grand. Thank you.
No worries.
should I also, I just realized as well, I probably should have sent an email out to people saying they need to bring pen and paper. Not that I don't think people will have pen and paper like nearby, but is that something I should probably say at the start, or should I leave that to you basically?
Yeah, maybe at the start just say, yeah, have something that you can make notes or doodle on, depending
Mhm.
on what they want
Okay.
to do.
All right. Excellent. Is there anything else I should be saying in preparation? Just some notes, some note paper and some pens.
Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah.
don't really
Okay,
need
cool.
anything
Oh,
else.
excellent. Let's see if my two coworkers are going to make it. Zoe has a 1-year-old, so let's see how how Etta is going to settle near bedtime. And then Thomas is, yeah, I think Thomas is in Manchester, so shouldn't be hampered by any weather conditions. So hopefully he'll join. But yeah, so far I've got 8 people, and it's also the first time we're doing like we limited participation because a couple of reasons. We thought like this is our first time doing a facilitated harsh light event, and we kind of wanted to make it a little bit more intimate for, just to, because it was like, I don't know, not that we would probably we've only gotten 100 people on harsh light like once before. But usually they're, sometimes they can get quite big. So maybe just seeing if a small group works first. But also like Eventbrite now charges for like if you want more than 25 people on your event, which is really unfortunate. It's like £8 for each event that you want to have more than 25 people sign up for. So yeah, we did this sort of like, please only sign up if you intend to show up kind of motto at the end of our thing. So okay, now it's past 1 minute past. Hopefully, it's 11 people now in the waiting room. So that's a nice number. I'll let them in now. Are we ready? Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Thanks. A lot of you have automatically turned off your audio as well as video. I think to start with, if that's something we can do, that would be really helpful. Just because we are going to be recording this session, much like our previous harsh lights. We want to share all of these sessions on our YouTube channel as a free resource. So that's really helpful. So thank you in advance for turning off your cameras and audio. We will have certain points in our session tonight where we'll have discussion. So you are more than welcome then to turn on your video and audio. And as you can tell, this session is also BSL interpreted for our deaf audiences as well. So I'll just do some really quick introductions. Oops, sorry, I still have to mute my, my G chat in the background. 1 second. There we go. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Sunshine. I'm co-director of program at Bloc Projects. And we have tonight a really lovely harsh light session that is facilitated by Jennifer Brough as well as Char Heather. And I just wanted to give everyone a little context about harsh light, what we're going to do tonight, and then do a very quick kind of grounding exercise before I hand it over to the two facilitators. So I don't know whether all of you have been to, or some of you have been to our previous sessions, but harsh light started almost 4 years ago during the coronavirus, and it was basically a way for me and other peers to come together and talk about some questions or issues that were affecting us at the time. Hi there, Olga. We're gonna turn off the video and audio in the first instance. Thank you. So back to what I was saying. Yeah, so harsh light and coronavirus. So yeah, it came out of that whole period when everybody was kind of like not knowing what to do with their programs, including ourselves, and as a small organization. And yeah, we just found that we were having a lot of very repeated conversations about like, how are you, what are you doing, how are things going, and harsh light was born out of that desire to take these questions to a more public platform and share them with other peers and other art workers. Obviously now it's kind of we're in a post-COVID kind of situation. Things have normalized a little bit. But yet we still want harsh light to be that space where art workers can come together and have a moment of critical, restorative, some sort of, those are the two key words that we work around in harsh light. Yeah, just a space to gather around and to think critically, but yet be a very restorative space. So moving forward, we're looking at harsh light to be more of a facilitated space, and this is our first attempt at it, so I'm really excited. So I will, yeah, I think what I'll do is just do our quick somatic grounding exercise, and then I will introduce Char and Jen, just like tell you a little bit about them, and then I'll hand it over to them to talk about tonight's very special mulching session. So yeah, this grounding exercise we tend to do at the beginning of all our harsh lights because, again, during coronavirus, we're all in different places, and being online, we continue to be in very different places. So it's a way of kind of bringing everybody into the room. So you can choose to do this, or if you want to sit it out, that's fine as well. And for Char and Jen, if you prefer to do this with your cameras off, that's also fine, by the way. I'll leave mine on just so that people can see if they need like a visual guidance for that, then it might be easier. Okay, so I was thinking we could do a breathing exercise, some deep breaths to the count of 5 in through the nose, and then we would pause at the top. And I thought to kind of bring the theme of tonight's talk into that exercise as well, maybe as we breathe all the way to the top and we pause for a moment, we actually just whisper or say out loud the word pause, and then hold it for a bit. And then we just breathe out through our nose again. So it's in through our nose. At the top, say the word pause, just quietly to yourself, and then out again through your nose. Okay. And you can maybe, let's do it 3 times and do it in your own time as well. I will do it aloud so you can see, for yourself when I'm stopping, and then we can continue. Okay, so I'm going to take a deep breath now. Okay. Thank you for doing that with me if you did. And if you haven't done it, that's fine too. We're just going to come back to the room. So yes, I will do a quick introduction of Jen and Char, and then let them kind of introduce the session to us tonight. So I will start with Char. Char Heather is a queer crypt writer, researcher, and workshop facilitator who is exploring the relationship between form, narrative, and chronic illness. Their work has appeared in Hotel, Spam, New Gothic Review, and Lighthouse Journal, amongst others. Char runs The Remote Body, which is a DIY organization that facilitates online arts events prioritizing chronically ill and disabled people, and is a member of the Resting Up Collective. And Jennifer Brough, she, they, is a slow writer and workshop facilitator based in Nottingham, UK. She's working on her first poetry pamphlet, Occult Pain, which explores the body, pain, and gender through a magical disability justice lens. She is also the founding member of Resting Up Collective, an interdisciplinary Sikh group of artists that offers workshops on rest and creativity. So yeah, I'm going to just hand it over to Jen and to Char. And oh, actually, I should have done this little bit of housekeeping at the start. So apologies for that. I'm a bit rusty on this. We're going to take a little break in the middle because for our interpreters and for our deaf audiences, it's important to have a little break. So we're going to have a 40-minute session and then a 10-minute break in between, and then we'll come back to it in after 10 minutes. So that's kind of the breakdown of today. And I will also turn off my video now to give the space over to Char and to Jennifer. But when time's almost up, I will turn my video back on again. So, okay, I'll see you later.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us. It's really nice to be able to use this space. Also nice to see some familiar names in the room as well. I'm gonna share my screen with the slides on, but I'm also just gonna pop a link which should give you the ability to view the slides and download them, hopefully, if I've done that right. If you want to look at them at a later date. Oh, I'm not sure I have currently have screen sharing ability. If someone could co-host me. But in the meantime,
I will do that right now, Char. This is Sunshine.
thank you.
There you go.
Perfect. Okay, let me. Ooh. Let me share the right screen. That would be useful. You don't need to look at what nonsense I've been watching on YouTube. And there we go. So yes, this workshop is on this idea of mulching, an idea of pause, that me and Jen have put together. I won't reread our bios to you all, but our contacts are on there if anyone wants to reach out and talk about this in more depth at any point. So as Sunshine said, the workshop is going to be split into two 40-minute sections, though of course if you need to take a pause, take a break at any point, feel free, obviously. We'll have a 10-minute break in the middle, and each section is going to include Jen and I kind of talking through some themes, some ideas. There'll be a creative prompt of which you can respond to either by writing, or if it's better for you to draw or doodle in response, then obviously you can do that too. So it would be good to have any kind of writing implement that suits you available for that. And then we'll have some discussion as well. And so I know there's some people who have done workshops with me before here who probably know this, but generally these workshops aim to be quite generative and to ask questions as opposed to answer them, because we'll all have different answers to these questions that kind of work for us. So hopefully this is a space to kind of examine and play with some of these ideas and see what works for you and what you can kind of take from this. So yeah, I really hope this is a generative couple of hours for you. So what is mulching? This is a word I've been using for a long time, I think maybe wrongly to some degree when I started kind of looking at how it is, what mulching really means in gardening. So in gardening, it's applying a layer of mulch, which is usually a mix of organic material, to topsoil to preserve the soil moisture, improve the ground for growth. Mulch itself is often created through a process of composting, but I feel like we also kind of use mulch as this kind of, this, is it a verb? A verb to kind of talk about these pauses and this idea of things mulching together and mixing up. And so we're using the term here to refer to periods of pause and rest in practice, in which our ideas are kind of composting, maybe they're fermenting, things binding together, breaking up again, and using it to think kind of how the composting of ideas while we pause is really useful, but also what it means to kind of cover our creative grounds and let it kind of be in the dark, and what happens when it's kind of covered and underground. And both Jen and I, our work very often is informed a lot by our experiences of chronic illness and disability. And so this kind of idea of being away from the world, hidden away, especially when you spend the majority of your time at home, feels really familiar. So a lot of this work is very much informed by those experiences. But rest, pause, mulching, whether you are disabled or non-disabled, I think really important things to be thinking about and looking at. And because I'm screen sharing, I have my notes on my phone and my phone's gone dark, so I'm just gonna wake it back up. So yeah, we're looking at these ideas of what's happening under the surface when we take a moment to rest, take a moment to pause. And we will be looking at kind of going through some of the different ways in which this kind of mulching metaphor works for us as a way of thinking through those ideas. So this is a quote from Anne Patchett, who admittedly is not an author I've ever read, but this is from her memoir. She says, "I am a compost heap, and everything I interact with, every experience I've had gets shoveled onto the heap where it eventually mulches down, is digested and excreted by worms and rots. It's from that rich dark humus, that combination of what you encountered, what you know, and what you've forgotten, that ideas start to grow." And so, unsurprisingly, the kind of award-winning novelist has sort of summed up a lot of what we've been thinking about quite well in this quote. And this doesn't attend to the ideas of rest that we're going to get into, but I think that idea of something mulching down, of kind of rotting and creating something new that might feel kind of fertile without us necessarily noticing that that's happening. I think she sums that up really nice. I think she puts it together in a nice way. And I think it's really interesting metaphor as well for kind of creative process. I think there's a lot of different metaphors that people move to. And I know that me and Jen have had a conversation about some that we didn't like, that doesn't mean that they're bad, but for me, they don't work. Like the kind of gestational metaphor of like, I'm pregnant with my work and I'm going to birth my my grand piece of art or writing, which doesn't really work for me, because I think of my work, well, there's a number of reasons why that doesn't work for me, but one of them is that I don't think of my kind of creative output or work as like a baby. I think of it as more of a communication of something that is kind of nurtured on a kind of interdependent, interpersonal level, as opposed to like a little entity that needs to be nurtured in and of itself. I don't know if that makes sense. So this kind of mulching, ecological, plant life, rotting, mushroomy metaphor feels a lot more kind of fitting to me. I think also because it probably speaks a lot more to my kind of illness experiences, and the ideas of not doing something doesn't always mean you're not doing it. There's a quote from Mel Y. Chen in a book called the name's gone out of my head. I'll find it and put it in the chat. which is that chronic illness is writing and not writing, doing and not doing, making and not making. And I think that kind of illness, which I think also links to anyone that experiences kind of the grind culture of the modern work ethic and what the arts are kind of, the intention that you're meant to constantly churn out art, whether you're ill or not. You've probably experienced a lot of moments of having to really stop, or like getting near burnout and things. So that pausing, this kind of mulching metaphor speaks more to that, for me anyway. And I'm going to pass over to Jen in a moment. Let me just get my notes. So this was actually Jen who remembered this meme that I had completely forgotten about, of Rock Girl Winter, which is a picture, very dark, kind of old painting of someone in bed with Rock Girl Winter written on the screen, as kind of I guess a clap back or follow up from Hot Girl Summer, that embraces this idea of just kind of hibernating, wintering, and going kind of into oneself in a way. I mean, obviously it's also just meant to be funny, but it does kind of speak a lot to how a lot of us would like to spend the darker months, as just kind of cozy and doing very little. And that kind of links in with what Catherine May writes about in Wintering. So I should read a quote from her book. Doing these deeply unfashionable things, slowing down, letting your spare time expand, getting enough sleep, resting, is a radical act now, but it is essential. This is a crossroads, we all know, a moment when you need to shed a skin. If you do, you'll expose all those painful nerve endings and feel so raw that you'll need to take care of yourself for a little while. If you don't, then that skin will harden around you. And so that's taken from May's, it's a memoir. I don't know why I was pausing there. May's memoir, that is also kind of a meditation on the wintering and different ways in which human beings experience winter, which I think kind of it feeds into this, and also to this time of year that we're in, kind of starting to get brighter. Some of us are starting to maybe emerge. Some of us might experience these wintering periods at all sorts of different times of the year. Today, where I am, it was absolutely snowing down a storm, so it feels quite poignant, I guess, like the weather showed up to be like, yeah, you should be staying at home and resting because you're doing a workshop tonight, so have your own like miniature wintering period, and miniature rotting period. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Jennifer to talk to us about rot, which is one of my favourite subjects.
Hi, and welcome to the rot period of the workshop with me, who is someone who is very much rotting at the moment, unfortunately. And I'm sure this is a kind of feeling of wintering, of mulching that many of us are experiencing, depending on your hemisphere. But what Char and I were talking about when we were coming up with this workshop is, how do we bring the internal mulching that each of us may experience periodically to a wider community kind of audience? So I'm going to talk a little bit about mulching as an internal process and then expand it out. So while I was researching for this, I was reading a gardening article about mulching, and I read the sentence, "Turn the mulch pile periodically to avoid fermentation." And as someone who was thinking about rot and fermenting, on further reading, I learned that if mulch is not periodically turned in this way, it does lead to fermentation, which is an organic process that releases toxic gases that can be harmful to the plants. So over time, the mulching process becomes a hindrance rather than a help to the soil and the plants within it. So if we contextualize this organic process in the context of embracing rot, what can we glean from it? So in wintering, sitting with oneself can be painful, difficult, and otherwise something you try and avoid in the summer months, especially if, like so many of us, our days are governed by the body's rhythms of pain and illness, or our work, or our caring responsibilities. So as maize wintering suggests, perhaps this decomposition fermentation process imposes a risk to the individual, which could indeed expose painful nerve endings. And I was thinking about fermentation in terms of alchemy, which is just a pet interest that I'm throwing in here. But in the traditional alchemical process, which is a mythic art of transforming metals, the first kind of stage of alchemy is the black stage, or the putrefaction and decomposition phase. And Carl Jung, who was a psychologist, drew psychological equivalents between that alchemical process and what the ego goes through. So simply put, the darkness does affect us all, whether we are wintering or whether we aren't. But in this kind of psychological context, it talks about the ego and fermentation as being brought about by the subject's painful, growing awareness of their shadow aspects. And I was thinking about wintering being a sort of psychic mirror for the times where we can't necessarily go outside and we are sitting with ourselves more. And even though it can be painful, this darkness is an essential period for renewal, much like in agriculture and nature. And crops and plants go through the same cycles of growth and death and regeneration. So again, another meme, we're basically just more complex plants with slightly different needs. But yeah, I'll hand back to Char for the exercise part now.
Thank you. So to kind of help facilitate this discussion and help people with thinking through this, we've set just a few kind of prompts that you can creatively respond to. However works for you. It's quite open to interpretation, I guess. But the questions that we're presenting you, or the kind of instructions we're giving you, I guess, is to write or draw in response to these ideas of mulching that we've tried to present here. So how does mulching or composting kind of resonate with your artistic practice? Are you someone that, like me, has like very, very long fallow periods that feel very important but also deeply frustrating? Or are you someone that kind of maybe has shorter moments of this mulching or composting stage? Are there other metaphors that you've used that feel like they lend something different, a different way of looking at this? Perhaps you're a big fan of kind of the gestational metaphor. Maybe there's something in that kind of can link together for you. What are the inherent differences between any metaphors that you have used, whether you like them or not, and this idea of mulching? What works or doesn't work for you, and feel free to be critical. You're very much welcome to find the things in this kind of mulching, rotting, composting idea that maybe doesn't resonate. And I hope that there are definitely things that do, but feel free to look to the ways in which you could tweak this to make something that works better for your practice. So what time are we on? You're going to have just less than 10 minutes to do this. In fact, quite a lot less than 10 minutes, probably more like 5 minutes. And then we're going to come back and have a moment where we can either discuss some things in the chat or verbally as well. So I'll be quiet and let you get to it. So yeah, we'll be back in just over 5 minutes. At about, by my clock, 7:33. Okay, if you want to start finding a place to pause, I invite you to put your hand up or write something in the chat if there's any observations or things that struck you. And we have Angela. Yes, go for it, Angela.
So I'm a bit of an incompetent gardener, but I have a garden. So I was thinking about mulching as feeding and as resting, also as covering something. So in some places I cover the soil around trees, for example, with mulch in order to retain moisture, because it means that it can't evaporate if it gets very dry in the summer. So it's not just a winter thing, although it is mainly a winter thing. And I found those, comparing my creative practice with those natural processes, really reassuring, because it's cyclical. So it sort of means if there are times when I'm not writing, then actually that's not just okay, that's actually necessary, which is a very nice spin on when I climb the walls because I'm not writing. And also this covering something to protect it basically from the times of drought. I was thinking about protecting some early ideas of writing. I tend to be someone who shares absolutely everything with anybody who looks like they might be interested. And I think for me, this, like, keeping some things maybe a little bit protected and not just take it out in the world, you know, like you would do with little seedlings in the garden. You'd put like a cloche over it or something so that it wouldn't get eaten. I think that's an idea I have that kind of appeals to me, that feels like that's an okay thing to do as well. You don't have to share everything like everywhere.
Yeah, I really like that kind of the protective image of the little kind of glass dome over it. It's really beautiful. And it's funny because these metaphors are so nice and useful, but at the same time that they don't necessarily, they help process the frustrations, but they don't get rid of the frustrations as well, of the enforced pauses that we have. I'm just going to read out what Chris has written in the chat as well. Quite like the idea that the rotting of current state mindset / thoughts can generate opportunities. It feels organic and fruitful. Yeah, I think because you have, so I don't know what different practices people are coming from, but I'm predominantly a writer, and there's always the idea of putting something in the drawer that writers use, of like, I've written a draft of something and I need to look at it with fresh eyes, so I'm putting it in the kind of proverbial drawer for, you know, a month or a year or whatever it is. And I feel like, I don't know, mulching feels nicer to me than putting it in the drawer, because it signifies that there's changing states happening. It's not just, you know, I'll come back to it when I've forgotten what it is, but more like ideas will be kind of, I don't know, doing some kind of alchemical nonsense while waiting. Does anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to share before we go for a break?
I have a little thought. I can't remember how to put my hand up because I haven't used. Oh, there it is. Reactions. Hello. Hi. I don't know. I can't see myself actually, which feels weird. But I was thinking a little bit about the idea of passive creativity, because I'm someone who's historically been really harsh on myself and like not been at thinking all of my ideas are unoriginal, or that all my ideas might be fine as ideas, but I can never put them into action. And something that has been actually helpful to think about recently in a world where like it feels like everything's been done already, is that you can create the most bizarre, original, abstract things when you're doing absolutely nothing, like when you're sleeping. Like I have really, really bizarre dreams and sometimes they have such a strong narrative form, and sometimes I can extract really clear themes out of them, and sometimes they're just absolute nonsense. But like that's something that my mind has created even on a subconscious level. So even on days where I feel like my life is absolute drudgery and really boring and unoriginal, but like I could still, like in my dreams I'm still creating something, like imaginary worlds. And also like I'm literally just looking at the nature around me and putting one foot in front of another. And what's really lovely is that if I'm feeling very, very like stuck, I know that I can literally just like shake off the cobweb, and having like I like kickstarting the creative process literally just by like walking. And to me, like walking, I guess it's an action, but it's passive in a way that you don't have to think about it at all. You just do it. I mean, if you're able to do it, you can. But yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'm just going to go straight to Shali as well, who has their hand up.
Hi. Yeah, I really liked the prompt of mulching. I actually drew directly because for me it's an easier way to express myself, and I write stories like this too. I tend to draw before and then I actually write what I drew. So I can show the drawing that I made. I don't know if we can see, but this is a character that has lots of limbs and parts that are floating around the character and that are coming back into the person as well. And this character looks very peaceful, and there is in some parts of the limbs that creates composing other nature, like some waves or so, or like some plants or something. And I just thought about it because of seeing mulching as something in movement, and of seeing that like while there is something that are rests and there is something that are composing together, there's other things that are created. And yeah, part of some limbs in the drawing disappear, but part of some appears and some create some things. And so it's like more of this like creation of body that can like change with the season, because also mulching made me think of the season and times. And while I was drawing all of that, I was thinking of somehow to Nausicaa from Miyazaki, and I was thinking of the toxic, what they call the toxic forest and the sea of decay, and those plants that are crouching somewhere and growing somewhere for something to make new. But I don't want to say too much about the anime in case people haven't seen it, but that's just an idea I had in my head.
Beautiful, thank you so much. Yeah, Shali has some really beautiful writing I've had the privilege of reading and listening to that looks at gardens. I'm just going to very quickly read some of the chat, and then we're going to go for our break. So Emma has said that for creating, mulching doesn't feel appropriate for me personally. I'd say it was more like the seasons because it never stops and has been my main, sometimes compulsive coping strategy. For my general years-long period of wintering, my creativity seasons can vary from day to day, but in this literal winter, it's creativity summer. I'm a maker. Yeah, that's a really nice way of kind of thinking through it, and the unstoppingness. Yeah, I guess that the wintering doesn't have to be kind of married to creative processing. They can be two very separate, well, not separate, very interlinked, but separate in terms of what's happening at a given time, I guess. That made sense to me. I don't think it made sense when I said it out loud, but thank you for sharing. And Olga says, for me, less to do with mulch, but time, as a plant takes time to grow, specifically working with medicinal plants that take time to mature. And so it takes me a long time to get things done in ways that work for my body, mind, emotion. Yeah, I feel that very strongly. And also Angela saying about how the processes are transformational, which that's what I was writing about during the prompts as well, thinking of the idea of transformation. And also, yeah, I'm quite interested in this question of whether dreams are passive or not, and this idea of what Dara was talking about with passive creativity, and if passive is it passive, or is it almost just kind of under the surface, and what all those words kind of mean to us in different ways, I think is really interesting. As another very, very vivid dreamer, last night I dreamt that I was in a polyamorous relationship with the flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. There's a fun fact for you all. Very vivid dreams. Which, on that note, I think we should go for our 10-minute break. When we come back, we're going to talk through a few more ideas here and do some more writing and have some more discussion. So I'll see you back here in 10 minutes.
Yes. See you, everybody.
Hopefully people are making their way back. And I'll share my screen again. And so in this second section, Jennifer's going to talk through some more kind of ideas that came from this idea of mulching and the work kind of done in the dark. And then we will have another creative prompt and then a bit of a longer discussion period. So I will hand over to Jen just a second when she's ready.
Yeah, I am ready to rumble. So for this next section, we're going to continue on themes of mulching and wintering and some of these private revelations we have in the dark. So I've got this poem on screen, which I'm going to read through, which is a poem I go back to a lot, especially in these kind of fallow periods. So this is June Jordan's These Poems. These poems, they are things that I do in the dark, reaching for you, whoever you are. And are you ready? These words, they are stones in the water running away. These skeletal lines, they are desperate arms for my longing and love. I am a stranger learning to worship the strangers around me, whoever you are, whoever I may become. So what I think is interesting about this poem is that while Jordan is reflecting on very much an individual sense of things and the speaker is in the throes of a personal act, the reader is always addressed as you, and she states her aims. And I see these kind of words as both intention and promise, and one that is in the process of becoming, and the speaker is going through this change. So with this kind of poem in mind, I was thinking with Char about how we can turn a personal process of mulching into a wider mushrooming practice of rest, something that we do individually, but we also share with those around us, whether it's through workshops like this or in our caring communities or interpersonally in whatever way that takes. So while I kind of continued my gardening research, I was thinking about this question, can mulching be a form of care work? And I found some lovely images of how mushrooming happens. So I'm just going to, I'll pop these in the chat after I've read them, or just so you can kind of follow along with what I'm saying, because it's quite scientific for me. So I'll just drop them in now. But following my gardening research, I learned that mulch can be a place for fungus to thrive, and that the moist environment in mulch is conducive to mycelium, which is mushroom networks, which we can see in this lovely image here, which sort of looks like roots, and they're in a blue kind of light, and at the very end of each of these little networks there are green buds. So yeah, so as I said, I'll just read through how mushrooming happens on mulch. Things I wouldn't know if we weren't doing a workshop on it. So firstly, mushroom spores land on suitable organic material like mulch. The spores then germinate and grow these thin threads called hyphae. And the hyphae then grow and intertwine to form mycelium, which colonizes the mulch bed. So the mycelium then breaks down complex organic matter into simpler forms through enzymatic processes. And eventually, if the conditions are favorable, which is the right temperature and moisture, the mycelium will produce fruiting bodies that we recognize as mushrooms. So I was thinking back to Jordan's poem and viewing it through this mushroom germination amid mulching lens, and how we can extend the processes of growth we go through in mulching beyond our individual selves. And lines that kind of spoke to that process, where she says, "These skeletal lines, they are desperate arms for my longing and love." And I read these skeletal lines as the hyphae, like these kind of delicate connections that are growing and reaching out to others. And in that process, she continues, "I am a stranger learning to worship the strangers around me." And as these kind of small connections and the hyphae grow and they fuse to become this wider network of mycelium, although it's imperceptible to the human eye, there is that communal network there. And what I think is really special about Jordan's poem is that while the I is the speaker guiding the poem along, the speaker recognizes themselves as part of a bigger ecosystem. And in the final lines, she anticipates herself to be changed through this connection with others, which I think is really just like a beautiful thing to think about in terms of mushrooms anyway, but also the connections that we make that can really differ how our day turns out. Like, for example, today I was very much rock girl winter, and now having done this kind of workshop and like talking through and hearing people's ideas, I do feel more sparks of these little green strands of hope. And the article where I got this image from, there's a really nice quote that says, "Most of these fungi are underground and too small to see without a microscope, but they are plentiful." And I was thinking about that in terms of the individual acts of care that we may receive and perform with our care networks and how they sustain us. So answering or trying to answer or thinking on the question of, can mulching be a form of care work? I've got quite a long quote from one of our favourite disability activists, Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarancina, and her essay Care Webs. So some of you may have come across this before, but the essay is called Care Webs: Experiments in Creating Collective Access. And it's a response to how we can care for each other outside of the medical complex. So outside of hospitals, outside of social services, and on a more interpersonal level. And the essay talks through how making care collectives or care webs can be beneficial, especially with real life examples of political organising. So as disabled architects and practitioners of care webs, Leah reminds us that, and this is the quote on the screen, "We have the opportunity to dream and keep dreaming ways to build emergent, resilient care webs. I believe that our work in creating the new world depends on it, because all of us will become disabled and sick, because state systems are failing, yet community is not a magic unicorn, a one-stop shop that always helps us do the laundry and be held in need." And Leah goes on in this essay to talk about how we can break from the model of paid care as the only way to access disability support as people who may require it, and resisting the model of charity and gratitude, and basically making disabled people and chronically ill people the architects of their own webs as a form of empowerment, but also as a way to sustain how we interact with each other long term beyond paid services that might not be accessible to many of us. And making disabled people and chronically ill people, and indeed this can apply to any of us regardless of physicalities, determine what kind of care we want in our lives and the systems that we build around us. So kind of cultivating our own mushroom networks there. So I was thinking about creative collective thinking across this mycelium network and how the wider world can be affected. And again, this is a quote from the article on mushrooms, which is illustrated with this picture here, which is like blades that look like grass with kind of a bulb on the end and multicolored dots. And this is an image of a fungal network with reproductive spores containing nuclei. So the quote from this article said, "These networks, which typically share a mutually beneficial relationship with the plants to which they connect, are fundamental to how forests and other ecosystems work." And I was thinking about Leah's writing in the context of mulching and mushrooming and how we can place individuals in wider care webs, which means we do have these places then to mulch individually and pause without there being an involuntary fallow period. And although these images seem quite otherworldly, when we connect them with mulching and care work, it's kind of an open question that I'm wondering how we can transform our individual practices of creativity and care and make pockets or care webs with our own friends and other people. So yeah, we're going to move on to a writing prompt based on that Char is going to introduce.
Thank you. This kind of stuff just makes me very excited. So I'm kind of sat here quite giddy, and I've realised I haven't put interdependence into this prompt, so I'm going to add to that. So the prompt for you to respond to is thinking about what modes of rest and pause feel most resonant with your own body, mind, and your own practice. So what kind of timeframes maybe you're looking at, and I think people started to touch on this earlier. So do you need kind of a month to do gentle kind of other tasks in order to mulch ideas, or is it something that's happening kind of in a daily practice of, you know, doing something for a bit, then having a break in the day? Are you, like myself, someone who is doesn't have a kind of sustained pattern, so it's kind of maybe a surprise when these mulching periods might make themselves more necessary than others? And how does that kind of, how can that be built into a creative practice that feels more kind of comfortable and works with the body and the body mind, and someone earlier said body mind emotion or something along those lines, which I really like. Are there several different interlocking projects that you can kind of do and hop between as a way of kind of resting by thinking about something else and letting other things mulch? And importantly, what does rest mean to you? I think that's a question that I would happily ask at every workshop I ever do, because it's something that constantly changes for myself anyway. And then in addition to that, how do these processes, how do these kind of ways of accessing practice lead to ideas of interconnectivity, interdependence, kind of what I can't say the word, but is it the phylae, the little root connecting things, where are they kind of coming from? Hyphae, that's the word, it just came to me. What might they be in your work? Is it these kind of, you know, little voice note conversations you're having with your friends from bed about certain ideas? Is it, you know, other things that are helping to kind of sustain you in a important way? I hope that made some sense. But yeah, please feel free to respond to kind of anything that we've talked about as well. So I'll give you about 10 minutes, just under 10 minutes to write some things, draw some things in response to this, and then we'll come back and have some chats about it. Okay, if people want to find a place to pause, we're going to come back together and I will stop sharing the screen so we have lots of space.
Okay.
So yeah, we're opening up for discussion. If there's anything people found in that was interesting that they'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. And feel free to use the chat or to put a little hand up. Olga?
Hi, I was just going to stretch as well. Lower hand, there we go. Thank you so much. That was really beautiful actually. And some kind of mad free drawing happened in this space because I've been meaning to try out this technique that is putting dots on paper in no particular order, which is it's from a book called Beginner's Mind on Soto Zen practice, and he talks about how monks used to practice putting dots on paper in no particular order, and how that's entirely impossible because there's always some kind of order existing. So the final page of my notebook, or well, from today anyway, looks a bit like this. Oh no, the blur isn't helping, is it? There we go. So there's some dots, and before that, some other stuff happened. I don't know what this is. It's some kind of network or something. And yeah, I was really glad that dreams came up as well earlier, because I woke up noticing, and I noticed raindrops on the window, and I wasn't sure if I was dreaming of rain or I woke up feeling the rain. So it was a kind of strange kind of liminal space in between. And I noticed especially how raindrops are not a kind of right form that we think of them as, you know, in representation, for example, but they're actually angular and incorrect forms. So I don't know, that was a really fascinating moment for me today. I'm a bit delirious from being up until 6 in the morning. So there you go. Happy bunny. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I want to try the dot thing. I'm working on a novel at the moment, and I've been doing lots of kind of trying to figure out the shape of it, which is some sort of network. And I feel like maybe there's something in the dots that could be interesting for that.
I'd love to see that. Yeah.
I mean, it's wild scribbles that don't make any sense. And yeah, I agree with Sunshine that the other one felt kind of intestinal. I drew, they're too small, they won't show up, but some kind of similar amorphous kind of gooey looking figures. I'll just read what Sean's written in the chat as well. Thinking back about dreaming, I often think about dreams as being a sort of fermentation or pickling, less from a botanical view and more gastronomic. Fermentation isn't good for plants unless you're eating them. Hello, sauerkraut. And I often think about my brain pickling overnight, making sense of all the daytime rubbish. Yeah, I love that so much. I'm a big fermentation fan. And that's also a way that I think through things of kind of making something that's nutritious and delicious through a process of rot. Rot's maybe the wrong word, but fermentation, I think is really interesting, and linking that to dreaming is really nice. I think that will, I mean, I don't know, my particular dream that I mentioned, I'm not quite sure what I'm fermenting or manifesting with that, but other dreams that are maybe more useful. That's a really interesting process to think through. Would anyone else like to share any tidbits, any thoughts? Camille?
Hello. I put my hand up and now I'm like, can I speak? I'm gonna try. I found it interesting what you were saying, Jennifer, about the connections and how like connections can be made through sharing writing and like thinking about, I don't know, I really struggle with maintaining friendships these days, and I don't know, it was quite nice to think about how you can kind of have different sorts of connections like in that way, and that it kind of made me think, yeah, it is actually really important to have those. Yeah, so anyway, sorry, my computer was just saying something. And then also there's lots of different types of rest, I find, and I find it very hard finding a balance between like getting that right. Like if I can go out, take my dog out, I feel good because it kind of makes me feel mentally a bit more rested. But then I'll be tired physically, and likewise, if I have this idea in my head of like what I should be doing when I'm resting, which is I don't think it exists, because I never feel, if I try and like, yeah, I'm just going to lie here, even if I feel really bad and I can't do anything else other than lie there, I don't feel rested because my brain just feels, I don't know if it's because I have ADHD, but my brain just feels like, and that's feels quite tiring, exhausting. And then I just had, I think, one other thing to say, which was that I guess I just said that I have ADHD, and I kind of need a lot of, I can't really stick with one thing that I'm interested in. Like I can stick with it for a bit, so I'll have to change up like how I note down my ideas. So like for a while I'll be into using my voice memos, for a while I'll be into using my notes app, or like handwriting, or like different laptop places, which can kind of make it all feel really fragmented. But then I really liked the kind of thinking about all of those things as like this big heap where it's all just kind of like mulching there, and that it doesn't need that kind of consistency in where you're put. And also sometimes, a lot of the time, most of the time, I'm not even writing it down. I'm like talking to a friend about it maybe, or just keeping it in my head for a long time. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say. Also, I looked over and realized that I'm sitting next to a cassette tape of I think a death metal band called Coffin Mulch, which I thought was quite funny. It's my partner's tape. I don't know if they're any good, but yeah. Thanks.
I think in this context, the phrasing coffin mulch is really, really
That's
interesting
brilliant.
and fruitful.
I love it.
Yeah, a lot of that resonates with me. And next week we're doing the workshop on fragmentation, and what you were saying about having things in all these different places, and because I do that as well. Yeah, I might steal some ideas from that for next week, so that's really interesting to me. Let's go to Nico.
Hey, yeah, so I had a lot of thoughts about, I always have a lot of thoughts about rest, but that I think it's a very elusive thing for me, that I do a lot of things that look like resting, but then they're not very restful. I think my body mind is so like agitated all the time. Yeah, I feel like doctors and things, they all use language like lethargy or something, and I'm like, I don't know, like I feel like my body's like on 1,000 miles an hour actually, even if it's very still from the outside. And yeah, I was thinking like, am I even capable of resting, or like resting feels very unsafe also sometimes. And yeah, like I guess now I'm in this like period of like my health being kind of in a not such a bad place, and having had these like long periods of like this kind of agitated rest or whatever, and yeah, and now trying to rest feels really scary also, because it's like related with these other times of spending really, really protected periods of time lying down. I mean, not that rest, it has to be lying down, but yeah, I'm just like, is there something that makes me feel restful? And I've been thinking a lot with waiting, like in my practice recently. That's like the main thing that seems to be concerning me, because I think that like waiting is just what it is to be, like to live in a crypt body or also a trans body. And yeah, I also live in Finland, so I think like also the like, and I'm British, so I think like also this like migration and like waiting, those are like you're waiting all the time for papers or whatever. And yeah, the more you wait, the more kind of marginalized you are, and it's always something that's like enforced on marginalized bodies by people with power. But yeah, I was thinking about like actually I was like, I can't really answer these questions about rest, and then I realized that I'm just like waiting for rest somehow. Like that's kind of the practice, is like kind of like I need to rest. I know I need to rest, so I keep waiting. Yeah, and it's like, what do you do in the waiting? Like you find strategies for something to do in the waiting.
I had a big thing, I've just taken it down because it fell off the wall, but a massive thing from a workshop me and Jen did about rest and waiting last year and all the different kinds of waiting. And so everything you said, yeah, felt very, very poignant and very beautifully put. And yeah, the idea of constantly waiting for rest. Going back to the dream thing, like sleeping for me is not restful at all because I have these like really wacky dreams and I wake up like heart thudding. And so it's interesting thinking of, yeah, how on earth do we rest? How do you come to that? Let's go to Dara and then we'll go to Shali afterwards and then we'll have to end soon. So Dara, let's go to you.
Hello. Oh, can I put my video on? Oh, I can. Oh, it says I can't. That's weird. Okay. Can you hear me okay? All right. Sorry about that. I don't know why it's doing that. Yeah, I really really love that meditation on waiting. That really resonated. Oh, I'm in. Hello. Hi. I really loved that. And I also, Camille, what were you saying about finding community and the difficulty of maintaining friendships, etc. That kind of relates to what I have been thinking about, is so that I think having to rest a lot, living in like a body with chronic illness, really has forced me in a society that very much prioritizes like the heteronormative nuclear family structure. That's had to make me really like reframe my ideas of intimacy, so, and find new ways of like defining intimacy. So I read a book last year which I loved. It's called BFFs by Anahit Baruz, and basically it is a book that it's sort of exploring and commending the like unique beauty and joy of specifically female friendships and the radical potential that they hold. And in it, the author illustrates like the difficulty of upholding these bonds, and the way in which they're relegated to the sidelines as we grow up. So there's this juxtaposition between when you're a child and younger, where friendship is the most important thing in our social lives and it takes center stage. And then you come of age into this sort of like capitalist, patriarchal, social stratification. And yeah, it's very much relegated to sidelines, and the nuclear family is more prioritized. And this is it's quite a difficult thing if you're someone who is disabled and also like chronically unlucky in romantic relationships, because often the idea of there being a domestic person who is there to sort of take care of you and seeing you when you're not feeling fun and when you're not feeling like your most bubbly self that is often seen as something that a romantic partner does, whereas your friends, you go out and sort of have fun with your friends. And I've often like felt the impact of that. And a concept that the author talks about in the book, which I really love, is this idea of errand friends. So it's not friends who you go and see, you don't have brunch with them and sort of catch up over a drink. You properly like do life together in this very domestic way, like friends who you go to the grocery store with, friends who come and like take a nap at your house, and like these friendships with no expectations. And I feel like that concept can be expanded even more to like the idea of rot friends, like rotting together. And at the moment I'm doing this quite a lot, like me and all my friends are just like, everyone's sick and sore and tired, and I have a lot of friends who like, we have no expectations of each other. They come around to my house and we sleep and we eat and we watch bad TV and we go grocery shopping. And like, as someone who's been single, like in the romantic sense for a lot of my adult life, it's so incredibly like beautiful and restorative, like for my disabled self, to like removing the shame and removing the isolation that comes with rotting. And yeah, it's like a really lovely way of reframing care, I think, like rot friends. So that's my little speech on that.
I love that. I love the idea of rot friend. I mean, I definitely have lots of rot friends, but I think we often rot together with a fair bit of distance as opposed to in the same space. I think maybe in part because of geography and illness, but also in part because of the expectation that you're going to have like a really wonderful time and we're going to talk about lots of things, instead of being able to just kind of sit quietly and rot together. That's really wonderful. Thank you so much. I think also the term rot friends has gone viral, at least in this workshop, and I want it to go viral in the wider world. Let's go to Shali for our last contribution.
Yes, thank you for all of that. Like I had all of my thoughts, and now after everybody talk, I'm like, whoa, that was really beautiful, and I actually resonate with really everything. The rest with the waiting, the friendship, for me, I feel like these times of resting have been reframing needs and reframing access and realization, or like the different layers of awareness of disabilities, of always coming back and forth and trying out things, and then realizing that this space or these things or this activity or in this way was not accessible, and then having to redefine rest all the time as an urgent need, as an access need actually, and trying to incorporate it as an access need, and having struggle with it in the space that I am in, which is also artistic space and also performance and the show spaces, where showing up, where being in loud space, being like constantly doing something is required as for profession. So there's always this like questioning with my professional practice and my connections, and then also in the artistic world there's always this mix of friends and artistic connections, which can be very confusing, because then when we talk access, there's it's not the same, and so it creates this different realities of rest. So it's maybe reframing and refinding a form of reality that is for me resting, I would say. And also recreating or transforming another form of time, because I think for me resting really, or like a form that I could have of resting would be not having a time, not being in a time, because this time is suffocating me, I think. And I can't rest if I have to calculate it in hours or seconds somehow. So it's complex, but I do believe in relativity in time. And I feel that when I'm painting and listening to an audiobook, for example, I found that in this way I am resting, because maybe the time is just spreading differently. But yeah, it's just all of those thoughts. But definitely the reframing is for me right now a big thing and painful, but a so very important thing to do. Yeah, thank you for listening and sharing.
Thank you. That's a really nice place to pause as well, I think. Yeah, I mean, I have so many thoughts bubbling away about time and wanting to abolish the clock in some way, which probably would result in some sort of chaos, but maybe not. Yeah, thank you so much. We've gone over by a little chunk, so we'll wrap up. But thank you all so much. This has been so beautiful. I've gone bright red from joy. So yeah, thank you all for sharing.
Yeah, and thank you to our interpreters as well. We really appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. If you want to turn on your videos just to say bye, you can. Otherwise, go ahead and rest this evening, hopefully. Yeah, thank you everyone so much for coming tonight. Yeah, we also have another workshop that Char and Jen are going to be leading next week as well. If you haven't signed on, there is, I think, just a couple of spots left. Some people have canceled their tickets, so there are now a couple of free availabilities and also a waiting list. So yeah, do look it up. Yeah, thank you again, and hopefully see you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks so much.